Hey y'all, my name is Mike Cosentino. I'm the founder of Big Peach Running Company in Atlanta, Georgia. I've got my friend Sean Nagorny, our general manager for Big Peach on Wheels, here with me for another year. It is our good fortune to be able to partner with Cox on the annual Cox 5K. I know it's being done a little bit differently this year than what it was when we first started with this event. It's good news that it's being done at all, so really cool. Certainly, I know there are many of you who are looking forward to doing it again, and hopefully many of you who are doing it for the first time. We do a program, we've had the good fortune of doing it on campus and certainly through various media that we call Getting Started, Staying Strong, and Sticking With It. So we're going to do that for you today, right now. We're going to cover some things that are critically important. Sean and I will tag team. We've got one mic, so hopefully it won't be too distracting as we pass it back and forth. Quick sound check. Sean, how are you doing? It's good to be able to do this with you.
I'm doing really well, Mike. Thanks for being here with me, and I'm excited to talk about our company and what we do best. And we're excited for Cox Enterprises doing their virtual 5K, and we're very happy to be a part of that.
Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and get started. And again, thank you for allowing us to do this. First and foremost, for those of you who may have heard of Big Peach, you know we've staked our reputation on fitting others for footwear. Not that we don't do many other things. We'll touch on some of those for sure today. We're going to use an outline. And even though we're going to start with footwear, this outline that we're using will make available to you. We'll use it as an attachment to what we're saying so you can go back, listen again, or follow along. Certainly you can share it with your colleagues who are unable to join us, or perhaps family members who are joining you in the virtual Cox 5K this year. But footwear, Sean, as you know, is something that we're very well known for. We use a 3-step fit process when we have guests inside our stores or on Big Peach on Wheels. Certainly that 3-step fit process is easy for us because it's also reflective of the 3 things that our guests and certainly our friends at Cox should know about when they're thinking about footwear at all. Do you mind kind of kicking us off and giving everybody a sense of what they should be thinking about to have that best pair of shoes for them as an individual?
Well, Mike, it really boils down to 3 things, as you mentioned: the fit, feel, and ride. When we do a fit process at Big Peach, we are really looking to hone in on that overall encompassing comfortable feeling, and the focus is comfort. And everyone's situation is different, but we want you to be comfortable in the pair of shoes that you select. And so again, fit, feel, and ride. When we have a guest come into our store, the Big Peach Running Company, we will interview the guest and to see what they intend to do with this footwear. Are they looking to train for a 5K? Are they looking just to walk, just general exercise? Do they just want a comfortable pair of shoes to wear to work? So we're going to interview you, get some information. The first thing that I really look for is their when I'm interviewing a guest, I'm doing a quick look at their feet. I want to see what kind of foot shape they have. So I'll just use an example here with this shoe right here. This is a Brooks Adrenaline. When I'm scoping out someone's foot, I want to see what the width is. Do they have a narrow heel? Is their foot wide here at the metatarsal? That's going to be my first concern. I want to know their foot characteristics. And next we're going to take a look at their arch type, arch flexibility, and there's a number of different ways we go about that. The first being an eyeball test. You can sometimes tell right off the bat if someone has a very collapsed arch, flat arch, or if they have a very high arch. That's pretty simple. But we do have the ability to do a scan of your foot and get a more in-depth look at that arch. So we're going to look at that part of the foot characteristics. Also, size. We want you to be in the right size of a shoe, and it's very funny because your casual shoes that you wear off the street aren't always in sync with the brands that we carry. In running shoes and walking shoes, it's typically you're going to go up a half size to a full size. So don't be surprised if the size you're wearing in your casual shoes doesn't match up with what you select in our footwear that we carry. So again, fit, feel, ride, extremely important. We want to get the size down, the characteristics down. So once we get that, we select what we call a test shoe, which is typically of the neutral variety. So a neutral shoe, here's an example right here. This is the Hoka Bondi. And characteristics of a neutral shoe, it's going to be very cushioned. It tends to be a little lighter, not as built up on the medial side. We want to start you off in that test shoe because we want to see what your pronation level is. So pronation is defined as the normal inward rotation of the foot. And we all pronate to some degree. But what we can do is we can film you as you're running or walking, and we can tell if you have a tendency to what we call overpronate. That's the roll inward to the medial side. Or if you have a tendency to supinate, you roll out to the lateral. Or if you're right down the middle, a neutral runner. Now, there's some variances that, of those three things. You know, some folks tend to supinate more than others. Some tend to overpronate more than others. We can work with you and get that level down. So we're going to, again, once you walk in, we're going to interview you, get your foot shape. We're going to bring out a test shoe. We're going to watch you run, watch you walk. We're going to see where you are on that level. Then we can start to kind of narrow down what type of shoe would most likely work best for you. And then we're going to have you try those shoes on. Again, we're going to watch you run or walk once again and see if that pronation level is dialed in. We want you in the most neutral position possible. That's not always the case. Some folks are just going to have a slight bit of overpronation at all times, but we can help get you that better fit.
So much good information there for sure. A couple of things I'm going to pull back out just as reminders. First of all, I know oftentimes somebody who very much means well, could be your spouse or dear friend, could be a colleague or a neighbor, is going to say, man, this shoe is awesome. Sean just referenced the Bondi from Hoka, and they would say, man, this Hoka Bondi has been amazing for me. You should try it. Here's what he said that you should be mindful of. He talked about arch profile. He talked about how broad or narrow your feet might be. Maybe your heel is more narrow than that well-intentioned neighbor or colleague. Just because it's a great shoe for him or her does not mean it's a great shoe for you. That's why it's important that that interview is done, why that foot shape is considered. Secondly, he talked a little bit about size. We always talk about a thumbnail or so of length between the end of the shoe toe box and your longest toe. For those of you who your big toe is not also your longest toe, we're talking about your longest toe, about a thumbnail's length. So that is part of why oftentimes your casual shoes and your athletic shoes are not always going to be the same size. Sean gave you permission to accept that because oftentimes it is true. Also, it is worth mentioning for sure, as you start putting shoes on, comfort was the term he used, and that is the best gauge. Ultimately, you're the expert. After we've gone through something like foot shape, after we've looked at your gait cycle tendencies, the truth is it needs to be comfortable. You need to look more forward to putting this shoe on than taking it off. So once you start trying on shoes, you're going to be that authority. Yes, this feels great. Man, it feels like slippers, and I love having those on. When you get that kind of feedback or response from your foot, or you just feel like that's the message that's going to your brain when you have a pair of shoes on, wow, that is a good pair of shoes. Shoes aren't everything, though, Sean. We've got a collection of merchandise here. We know there are other parts that make it work. Tell us a little bit about some of the other items that are here right now.
So you can't walk out the door with a nice pair of shoes without a very comfortable pair of socks. So at Big Peach Running Company, we pride ourselves on carrying moisture wicking socks. We don't carry any cotton socks. Cotton is rotten. That's our mantra. We want something that's moisture wicking, anti-blister, that's going to complement those new pair of shoes you just purchased. Especially in our climate here in Atlanta being very high humidity, we don't want a sock that's going to hold in that moisture. We want it to wick away. We want you to be comfortable while you run. So when you're at Big Peach Running Company, pick up a nice pair of moisture-wicking socks. This particular one right here is Belega, which is a very popular brand. And this is their Hidden Comfort. Most of our socks tend to be of the lower profile, and they do not slip down. They stay up. They don't ride. They're very well fitted.
Well, and part of what you've already invested in, perhaps, Sean mentioned it, if you look at the top part of this particular shoe, all of the shoes we call the upper, which is that portion, not surprisingly on the top. Very breathable, made of material that is going to dry very quickly. If you do not have a qualified technical sock on, you are negating that part of your purchase. The reality is we want the socks to send that moisture from perspiration, from dampness, maybe even from the weather conditions, to the upper of the shoe so that it can evaporate very quickly. When you're in that cotton product that Sean referenced, all of a sudden it just stays inside your shoe. It stays up against your foot and creates a perfect breeding ground for blisters or other challenges. Do not negate part of your footwear investment by wearing socks that are not made of synthetic materials. You might say, how do I know then if I am getting a sock with or without that cotton is rotten consideration? And just like when you're at the grocery store or you're looking at products off the shelves that you might consume, the ingredients are on the package. So you're going to see things like lycra and spandex, polyester and rayon. That is perfect. Those are items that are synthetic, that are transfer agents for that moisture to get to the top part of the shoe. But if it says cotton, whether it's a small percentage or whether it is 100%, you're going to want to stay away from that product. Equally as important for our female friends is a sports bra. It's easy for us to talk about fitting footwear. You and I are not going to claim to be sports bra experts, but I think it is worth reiterating how important it is that the women who are going to be part of this program, who are going to successfully finish the Cox 5K this year, also be a good sports bra. Anything you would comment about that?
So, Mike, I will say at Big Peach Running Company, we're all trained to fit bras properly, and we have a very wide variety of sports bras. And I just brought an example of one that we carry. Carry quite a few of these, the Brooks sports bra. It used to be Moving Comfort, and they bought Moving Comfort out. But this is one of their sports bras, and again, you want something that, it all comes down to comfort. We talk about footwear being comfortable. We want you to be comfortable in this sports bra. When you're out on a 5-10 mile run, and it's riding up on you, it's causing friction. You don't want that. So we can certainly get you in the right fitting sports bra, and something that's going to make you confident, happy, and comfortable.
A couple of terms that perhaps you've heard before: compression and encapsulation. Those terms, ladies, are going to be your friends in finding the perfect fit. If you're going out for a 30-plus minute walk or run or doing some kind of activity where a sports bra makes sense, you come back and there are still indentations in your skin after you've had the support top off for a little while, I can tell you that is not fitting correctly. And if it's riding up on your back while you are doing the chosen activity, that also does not fit correctly. Compression, whether it's in the band or other parts, even the straps coming over the shoulders, there are different ways now that these products are manufactured. Might be a zipper, might be a pullover, might be a strap in the back. All of those things come together to form what should be perfect compression for you. For encapsulation, obviously you have things like cup size and how comfortable you are. Should not be spilling out of it, and conversely should not feel like you're getting a lot of movement. When that happens, irritation, friction, even chafing might occur. So encapsulation, compression, take those things into account. If you've not been fit before, get a qualified expert to do so. This product, it matters greatly. Another thing, Sean, that we oftentimes hear is about inserts. And so what I did is I took the insert, or what we just simply refer to as the sock liner, out of one of the shoes here. I'm also going to take this particular product out. This is more of what we refer to as an over-the-counter insert. And when we say over-the-counter, this is made by a manufacturer that also does custom products for podiatrists all over the country. So highly qualified, a traditional insert perhaps, but a terrific amount of science that goes into the construction. And the question that we oftentimes get, should I have an insert in my athletic shoes? And here's what we would say: it's not our job to talk someone into or out of their insert or the product they're using. In fact, if you have a podiatrist or some other sports medicine professional who has recommended either a custom product and you've had that made for you, or an over-the-counter product like this, we don't want to talk you out of wearing it. If it's doing what it's supposed to, if it's alleviating discomfort that you previously had, if it is a prescription that you just believe it makes sense, then continue to use it. In fact, we would fit you with that product, or we would put a new pair in so you could be fit almost as if this is part of your foot. On the flip side, if you've not been in an insert or are not currently wearing something, but you're getting fit, we're hoping that the way we fit you, the way that you are fit, wherever that might be, it can be done without an insert, and all of those things that Sean talked about, your foot shape, your gait cycle tendencies, that those are evaluated to the extent that would not necessarily require you to add the weight, to add the cost of this type of product. There is a big difference that you can see very easily. This particular product now in front that came out of that Hoka Bondi, you can see how flexible it is, how flimsy it is. Quite frankly, the protection comes from the middle part of the shoe, the midsole. The impact is not controlled by this. The primary responsibility for this particular product inside is just to protect your foot from those stitches that are on top of the last. It is not intended to be a protective measure. For something like this that you can tell much more firm, not going to be nearly as flexible. In fact, there are components that are proprietary that are put in these types of products to help ensure that your arch is not overly flexible, that your heel is held very comfortably and perhaps even tightly so that there's not a lot of incremental movement. So these types of products are not manufactured the same. This, a lot of science behind it, a lot of reason for being where this is a comfort feature and certainly a part of every shoe, but not delivering the technical capabilities that the midsole and the shoe itself are. So we're not saying, yes, you need one of these, but for those who have them, we're simply not going to say either that no, you don't need it either.
I would just wanted to add to your point, Mike, that an insert is not for everyone, but for those who need it, it really enhances the support that they need. It's a great tool, and it's a great option that we have access to. And those who wear their inserts will attest that it makes a huge difference for them.
Great point. And we said, look, we want you to look more forward to putting your shoes on. For some people, this is part of what makes them look so forward to doing it, and then the activities that they've chosen to do inside those shoes. Here's one section of our outline you'll see. We just call it locker room talk, and here's why. And this is a chance for me to get on my soapbox a little bit. There are going to be things, especially if you're just starting this fitness or walking or running routine, that you're like, man, I had not anticipated that happening, or there's something that you're almost a little bit embarrassed about the fact that it happened, and you don't know if you want to disclose because you think you're the only person that could possibly be having this. Let me tell you, nothing could be further from the truth. There is almost nothing. I might even go on record as saying I doubt there is anything that has not happened to those of us who have been doing this lifestyle for a long time. Things, they rub together. Chafing and friction, it happens. Discomfort in places you didn't know were involved in a walking or running routine, yes, it is true. It could happen. So do not be afraid to disclose that. There are products like Body Glide and nip guards and butt butter and all these things that we say that's part of locker room talk. But they have a role, because when skin rubs against skin, or even the most technically capable garment rubs for a long period of time, when perspiration or warm temperatures or wet conditions happen, yes, these types of activities, they're going to have some discomfort pop up. If we can address it through some of what we call locker room talk, you're going to be more likely to stick with it. So please, if there's something that's bothering you, something that you're wondering, man, does this happen to other people? Don't let it continue to bother you. And yes, it happened to others, and there's probably a remedy for it. So with that, Sean, let's move to the second section of this outline, which we just simply say, stick with it. I'm going to dive in. I'm on my soapbox already. I'm going to get on my soapbox about one other thing, and that is, well, where do we start? Mike and Sean, you guys are the supposed experts, and there's all kinds of information online, and there may even be contrary information that you could find where one says this and something else tells you something altogether different. Here's where we would suggest you start. If you are getting into this routine for the first time or the first time in a long time, is start with your schedule. Of all the things that we could talk about, start with your schedule. And here's why. We believe, in fact, we say all the time, it's a lifestyle. For this to be a lifestyle for you and for us, this needs to be something that you do consistently and that you do over a considerable amount of time. So how does that happen? And we know there are a lot of people right now who their intention, maybe because of this discussion, maybe because of things that you've said to yourself or to others, your intention is to start walking a certain number of times per week, perhaps to run a certain number of miles this month, or whatever it might be that you now have very much the intention to complete. Intentions do not get it done. Next up, you'll say, well, I set this goal. I'm going to do the Cox Virtual 5K. Maybe if you're in Atlanta, you're signed up for the AJC Peachtree Road Race. Maybe there's something else you've got on your bucket list. Maybe it's a half marathon. You have a target. You have a goal. And those things are good. But like intentions, it doesn't get the job done. It does not equal consistency. The only thing that will ensure that this is a lifestyle is building the habit. Yes, make it your intention. Set some goals. But until you build the habit of this being something you do consistently, which requires you very much carving that time out on your schedule, week in and week out, month in and month out, year in and year out, it will not happen. The best laid intention won't make it come true, and the most honorable, perhaps even grandiose goal that you set won't make it happen. But building the habit, that is where the consistency occurs, and that's when this becomes a lifestyle. So start with your schedule. Sean, to kind of go from there, we oftentimes talk about gradual increases produce the greatest results. When you think of gradual and somebody maybe just getting started, you're a coach, how would you make that more publicly known, what gradual means, and what coaching would you give them to get started?
So it's a great point, Mike. You know, when you're starting out in a new activity and you're really hyped up and you're really anxious and you want to get out there and give it your all, you got to have some sort of game plan where you don't do too much too early and then you don't get discouraged. We don't want you to get discouraged, because then you're going to likely give it up. So what I suggest, and I do this with all the athletes that I coach, is we write down a plan for a month, per week. It depends on the individual how they want to break it up. But my rule, as far as maybe mileage, a good rule is no more than 10%. A week. So start off with, you could break it up into a number of runs or activities. So you could start off 3 a week. I'm going to do 3 for this week, and then next week I'll keep it at 3, and then the following week maybe go to 4. And just a gradual progression. And that way you'll be able to tell what's working, what's not working. You can dial it back, you can add. Don't do too much too early. See where you're at. Learn from what your body is telling you, and then increase if you want.
And that increase could be mileage, it could be minutes. I love that you use that term gradual. Man, if you take nothing else with you, if you're just starting, gradual is that term to take with you for sure. We did mention mileage. I know a lot of people who are getting started are using this as a weight maintenance, weight management, maybe even a weight loss program. We're going to give you this to think about. You can find out that it's valid if you do your own research, that 3,500 calories equal a pound. So if you're thinking, well, I want to use this as weight management or weight loss, how many miles do I need to walk or to run in order to lose some weight? Here's the thing we would just beg of you to take into consideration. Yes, each mile that you cover, regardless of pace, if you walk or if you run, because it's balanced out based on time, is approximately that 3,500 calories, so you would lose a pound. So if you're like, I'd like to lose 10 pounds, we could easily send you out tomorrow, have you run 10 miles, and you would think, I'm going to lose 10 pounds. You would be disappointed. But here's what you would not be disappointed about if you wanted to lose 10 lbs. If you build this into becoming a lifestyle, and you go out and run 4 days each week where you're covering 2 miles each day, and now you've done 8 miles week 1, you've done 8 miles week 2, perhaps in week 3 that gradual increase suggests 10 miles that particular week. Now all of a sudden, after a certain number of weeks, no promises how many weeks that might be, you lose your 10 pounds, not because you ran 10 miles, but because of metabolism. You have stoked that metabolism. You have increased that metabolic rate to where even when you're at work, even when you're at the dinner table, that metabolism is burning more intensely. And as a result of that increased metabolism, the weight starts to come off because of the consistency, not the number of miles that are actually out there. Anything else that you would mention just as tidbits for somebody who might use this as either a weight management, weight loss, or even a weight maintenance program?
With all the activities you'll be doing, you want to pair that with your diet. And I know you all will be given some information on specific information as far as your diet. I believe it was Ms. Palladino is doing a video just on the nutrition aspect, and she's going to highlight some of those keys and some best practices to help bridge the gap between the actual activity and nutrition, because without either one, it's going to throw off the balance. So you can't have it one way and not the other. You have to have them both in sync. And the other thing I want to mention is write it down. Get a diary or a logbook. Write it down. Write your goals down. Put it to pen to paper, and that way, it's there for you to see. You hold yourself accountable. It's being accountable, and again, going back to consistency. Consistency is key.
That's awesome. I love the fact that you brought up the diet. One of the things that people often say about walking and running routines is they are part of a keystone habit formation. So a lot of times somebody would say, well, first I got to get my exercise right, and then I'm going to work on my diet, or vice versa. Here's what oftentimes is the case, and when we refer to as a keystone habit, you start running, you start walking, you start doing it consistently. Now all of a sudden you're like, well, heck, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to do 8 to 10 miles a week, or if I'm going to walk 4 or 5 times each week, why wouldn't I start to eat right? Why wouldn't I start going to bed maybe a little bit earlier? Why wouldn't I start thinking about other parts of my life that maybe need slight modification? And it's that running or walking that spearheaded those changes, became the keystone to holding up all those other considerations that you're doing so well now as well. So don't suggest that start with one and then give you so much time before you begin the other. Start with this consistency around running and walking. Start with that term gradual, and then poke it ahead as you go, and you'll see other good habits come alongside those. The other thing, Sean, that I did want to mention as we talk about this is, and you mentioned how Alyssa would be coming on to talk about diet. We're also, as part of this program, going to provide some access to someone who can help people avoid injury, or perhaps diagnose injury, or perhaps come back from some discomfort. But there is a difference between discomfort and injury. And I'm not going to pretend that we're the experts on this. Thankfully, you've got that coming. But here's what we would say. We know that soreness is potentially true for all of us. We all push it on occasion. We all want to see what we're capable of on occasion. When we do something new, we're usually sore. When is that okay? And when is it that we've actually injured ourselves? Here's what we would say about that. If it is fatigue or achy or, yes, sore muscles, that's okay. You're doing it right. As you have those gradual increases, those things should come along for the ride. In fact, celebrate that soreness. It doesn't mean you want that to be the case all the time. Rest assured, it will change. It will get better. But things like stabbing pain, things that after resting for 3 or 4 days that don't improve, what would you say then relative to, is it discomfort or is it prospective injury?
If it starts becoming chronic and just very acute, and just you mentioned a stabbing pain, something very high threshold, you really need to seek some advice. Physical therapist, chiropractor, what have you, and have someone evaluate you and see where you're at. You could have some muscle imbalances that are, hindering you, that are, really affecting that muscle group or that joint. I would really highly recommend some professional help after, say a week or so, if it hasn't kind of subsided. Really look into that, because it could be something a little more serious.
Well, you're right. And when it's serious, that is what disrupts that consistency. So soreness, that is absolutely fine, even expected. I hope perhaps by the time you really get started, if this is new or new for the first time in a long time, that you'll actually look forward to that soreness. But those things that Sean just mentioned, do not just keep pushing it. Take that time off, get that professional consult that he recommended. That way you can get back to it as soon as possible, as opposed to taking yourself out of the game altogether. All right, we're going to come down the home stretch here. One of the things that I would say, Sean, I called you earlier, rightfully so, a coach. But really all of us become coaches once we integrate that consistency into our routine. All of us, everybody out there, us and the good fortune we have of working with all kinds of people every single week, we're all athletes. What are some of the things that you would say to your newest athlete, whether it's their mental game or something that maybe is not as easy to say as fact, this might just be personal opinion, that you would say to encourage others to say, you're doing this Cox training program, you're going to do the Cox 5K this year, you're an athlete. What would you say from there?
I would, I'd be very proud. I mean, I would, pat yourself on the back. You're doing it. You're making the commitment, and it's not easy to commit to something that you're not familiar with, and so enjoy it. Enjoy it with friends. Thankfully things are starting to open up again. We're allowed to kind of gather and try these challenges with your friends. It's easier as a group than just as an individual, and make it fun. I know it sounds simple, but explore new places in town to go exercise, to walk, to run, to bike. Take advantage of all that we have here in Atlanta. We've got a lot of great places to train, down by the river in the Chattahoochee, up to the mountains in Blue Ridge. There's so many different areas in the greater Atlanta area that you can go and tackle these challenges, and do it with a friend.
That's awesome. So it won't be long, and you also will be the coach. If you establish that consistency, you'll be amazed how many people will come to you and think, man, what do I need to know about whether this is the right pair of shoes, or I'm feeling this here, is that natural or normal? And all of a sudden, you will go from being that beginner or novice, or perhaps that person who feels unqualified to even take those first few steps, to being the expert in your household, perhaps in your department or in your neighborhood. And we love that. That's what it means to all be in this together, where we're all coaches. I was told maybe a few things really quickly about us, and then I wanted to mention how you guys can benefit from our time together. Big Peach Running Company, we first wrote the initial page to our business plan way back in 2001. In fact, it was hopefully one of those things that was a little bit of a change after September 11th. The business plan started on September 12th, 2001. We opened our first store in May of 2004. We now have 7 brick and mortar locations in and around Atlanta. We also have, like I mentioned earlier, Sean calling the shots for us there. Big Peach on Wheels, where we've been on the Cox campus a number of times. Absolutely our good fortune when that happens. We recently released a new concept, Big Peach Run, or Ride and Run, where we actually have bikes in our town Brookhaven location. You can learn more about that online. Yes, our entire inventory is online. You're going to get a discount code here in just a minute. It's available to you whether you're in our stores or shopping online. That is bigpeachrunningco.com, www.bigpeachrunningco.com. You'll see our entire inventory. Plus, for those of you in and around retail, you may have heard the term endless aisle. Yes, we have figured out a way to kind of worm our way into the inventory levels of all of our manufacturers. So we have maybe more inventory than what you could possibly imagine, because whether it's Hoka or Brooks or Superfeed or anybody else you see behind us, or any other brand that we carry, it's not just what we have in our stores where you could do a buy online, pick up in store. It's also available to ship to you from both our warehouses as well as from our manufacturers. So take advantage of that. We also would suggest, please connect with us. You can find us whether it's Instagram or Facebook on all of the socials. We do a podcast that I have the good fortune of hosting, the Run ATL podcast, just like what you see on our shirts, the Run ATL podcast. You can find that wherever you listen to your favorite media content. And then lastly, Sean, can't hold this any longer. For our friends at Cox Enterprises, COX10, COX10, that is your discount code, whether you're shopping online or whether you come into one of our stores. Just mention you're with Cox, or tap in those 3 letters and those 2 numbers, COX10, and you'll save 10% just as a result of the friendship that we are so fortunate to have with everyone at Cox. We appreciate what you're doing, not just by spending this time with us, but the fact that you are part of this active lifestyle, doing the training program, committing to that Cox 5K. So cool. Thank you so much. Sean, thank you for being part of this. Look forward to catching up with you on campus with everybody else again soon. In the meantime, I guess we'll give them our tagline. May your best miles be those covered on foot.